Do you feel the urge to move toward a more play-based practice and just don't know how to do it? Or maybe you're struggling to incorporate more child-led learning into your otherwise teacher-led program. The research is clear. Play is how children learn best during the early childhood years. But creating a classroom where play is the focus isn't always as straightforward as it may seem. I'm your host, Jen Zollinger. Join me as we explore the incredible ways that play serves preschool children and how to best implement it in your classroom. This is Play Before Pencils. I'm excited to have Christi Warr joining me on the podcast today. Christi is a native of Utah and a wife and mother of 3 amazing young adults. They have helped her discover her passion for teaching and embracing neurodiversity. She is celebrating the 22nd anniversary of Dirt Learning, a program she founded and operated in her backyard. She is passionate about teaching individuals of all ages, from preschoolers to adults, in various capacities. Her main goal is to support people in enjoying play, understanding their physical bodies, and gaining skills to help them understand their emotions. So Christi, thank you so much for being here to talk with me today about outdoor play. So forest schools, nature schools, being outdoors is something that has really been growing in popularity over the last few years. And I think that's for really good reason. There's so many benefits to just being outside, engaging with nature, getting your hands dirty a little bit. But I know that sometimes I feel, in fact, just yesterday, I was watching a reel on Instagram. And of course, we have to remind ourselves that when we see things on social media, it's like the best of the best. And you don't always see the messy parts of it. But almost every day I watch reels on Instagram where I just see these beautiful settings and people are in forests and they have access to all of these brooks and water, and it's just so beautiful and feels so natural. And then I take my kids out into my suburban backyard and I feel like, oh, this is just so basic. And I have to remind myself that even, using what I have, the amount of outdoor space that I have is still going to come with benefits for the kids. And you have a beautiful outdoor space. I wondered if you would just tell us a little bit about the program that you run and some of the benefits that you have seen for your students in spending a lot of time outside every day.
So I am in the same circumstances as you, as I wanted this beautiful forest school. But again, I'm in the farmlands of northern Utah. And so I utilized what I did have. And that's where dirt learning became itself, because I understood the benefits of the kids being outside, getting the vitamins, the fresh air, the exposure to the different elements of the earth, where it be weather, where it be the pollens, the sun and all that. And I just started to watch the kids and how it helped them. The biggest part was sensory issues. So helped them calm, helped them decompress, allowed them to move their bodies freely. And then we do have an indoor space in our program. So on those chances that we come in, their bodies were more in control because they've learned how to control them in big body movements. But just the being out in nature in the dirt. And I did what you've done is I've utilized what we have and I've played on that dirt. And so the kids are exposed to different sensory in lots of different ways by just being out, digging in the dirt, moving the rocks, just playing the way their bodies are meant to play, and bringing in kind of my farm background with the water in the trenches and the ditches. Not that we have ditches, but they create their own ditches and learn about the water system. It has been so fun to watch them.
That's fantastic. I love that. I mean, I spent so much of my own childhood outside, and I can think back to so many experiences even where maybe we got in a little bit of trouble at the end of the day because we were gone for so long and we ventured so far out. And there's just some nostalgia about that for me that I maybe haven't carried as much into my adult life. And I've worked in programs before that have not had any outdoor space. And the difference that I've noticed in my students in my program now, being able to get outside every single day, it's like they're just itching. It's just like bursting from inside, the need to be outside and to move their bodies, and the sunshine, the fresh air, all of those things really, like you said, I feel like it enhances the indoor time significantly. It really makes a difference in what we're able to accomplish when we're on our inside classroom versus, after we've been outside a little bit. So I love that. I have a lot of parents that not always remembering to grab a coat or a jacket or think about the weather beforehand. And so I know that you have a lot of systems in place to ensure that kids are appropriately dressed for the weather because you go out, I think you said last year, every single day you made it outside. How do you approach that with clothing and making sure that parents understand the necessity of their kids being comfortable with what they have on outside so that you can spend extended periods of time in the elements?
The biggest thing I tell my parents is dress for mess equals less stress. So when you send your kids to our program, know that they will be exposed to mess. So let them wear things that you're comfortable in getting dirty. And there's times I have to remind them, are you okay if this gets dirty? Kids are washable, clothes are washable. Um, and then I let the kids learn to regulate their bodies. Like I don't watch the weather on the news. My weather is we go outside and we see what happens. And we are in Utah. So in one day, we can have cold, rain, snow, we can have sunshine, we can have wind, we can have all the different elements in the day. So I ask the parents to leave clothes at the school so they have easy access to check in with their bodies and adjust as the weather changes. But our biggest part that has helped support the parents in allowing their kids to get messy is what we call mud suits. When you're buying them online, they're called rain suits, but they are a wonderful layer and you can layer underneath, but they're neoprene or plastic that prevents the water from going in, the wind, the mud. So they're less muddy. And then parents are more on board to allow that mess. And on the chance that the parents do forget or happen to take them home because they were going to explore at home, I do buy some as extras in the classroom. So I do have extra snow pants, mittens, gloves, and those different things for them. But then if there's days that the kids show up and they don't have what they need, sometimes we just say, well, let's see what your body does. And there's days that we just work with it. We never put the kids in a situation that would ever harm their body. But
Right.
sometimes kids feel the weather different than we do. And so they don't get as cold as we do.
Yeah. So I guess maybe that gives me some good feedback. I kind of allow parents to make a choice. I have a school set that they can rent if they want over the course of the year, or they can bring their own. But a lot of parents don't want to buy two sets for home and for school. And so one of the things that I struggle with is they are taking it back and forth, but they never remember to take those clothes out of their bag when they get home and they return the next day and their gloves are soggy and their pants are still wet. And so that's been a challenge that maybe I need to just make a shift in saying, this is something that we do every day. And in order to make that successful, you need to have a set of clothing that stays here. You can purchase it or I can purchase it either way. So I love that, you know, just making that an expectation. And when we talk about weather, you mention all of the elements. Are there any instances where you don't go outside when the weather is bad?
You were talking about earlier about the kids want to be outside. One time it was 4 degrees. And so it was kind of cold. And I was debating, is that too cold for the kids? And the kids are like, no, we want to go outside. And so we layered up extra to go out. Some of the extreme, we don't have a ton of extreme weather here, but if there's ever lightning or super high winds, we won't go in. But we've been very fortunate to just be able to layer up or play in the shady areas to prevent too hot or too cold. The kids always have access to water and sunscreen, so we protect their bodies the best we can with hats and sunglasses. But we don't have tornado. We don't have a lot of the severe
Yeah,
blizzards because they can play in the snow, they can play in the rain, and
right.
if we layer up enough and wear the right clothing, it helps us to adjust.
And do you ever have students who are less inclined, who maybe don't want to spend time in that weather? And if so, how do you handle that?
So what we do is there are some kids that are better fair weather kids than others. And so to get them engaged, we try and get them involved in something. What would you like to do? Is there a way you could move your body? Sometimes walking or jumping or playing builds our body strong. And if I have relationships with my kids, so I know which kids don't like the winter weather and are colder. So I make sure they're dressed a little differently or that they are sitting in an area that is protected from the wind or allowing them more sunshine because they aren't moving their bodies, that they can get the heat different ways from that. And then lead by example. If teachers dressed in a mud suit, the kids will put their mud suits on. If teachers are out moving in the playground, the kids will follow. If there's a way to invite them to engage in an activity with us to help move, that's good. But then on the case that it is just cold and either they got wet or they're what they wore that day isn't adequate for the weather and we don't have extras for them, we have enough staff that one of the staff members is able to take that child indoors earlier than the other kids, that the kids get to have a choice that my body's done with the cold weather. Can I go inside? And so a teacher will take a small group inside while those who are still engaged in the outdoor activities can still be outside.
Hey, you mentioned leading by example. And as somebody who maybe is a little fair weathered myself, I don't love being outside in the cold, which we have several months of pretty cold weather here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just a couple of years into running my program where I've had the ability to go outside on a daily basis. Do you have any, I'm still trying to figure out, there's lots of options for kids, but I feel like when I start getting to the adult stuff, how do you layer? What are some of your favorite pieces that have really made that a tolerable thing for you as an adult being outside with the kids, that you can stay warm and comfortable, still have the ability to move and be with them? Is there anything, do you have a favorite, item that like is kind of a must have?
Well, let me go back to when I was teaching in the public school systems and that I had to dress a certain way. The first thing I do is I dress in clothes that I'm comfortable and movable in, because then it's easier for me. And then I layer up. And I learned every time we go out, my body gets more acclimated to it. So as the season starts, I get better with it. But I know that my body needs my neck covered and my ears covered. And then I can regulate better. And so it is not a fashion show at our preschool.
Yeah.
I dress warm and comfortable. I did find some gloves through one of the companies that are adult waterproof lined gloves, and they have been a lifesaver because I have part-time classes and 2 different classes. I have 2 sets of things. So when my gloves get wet from the snow in the morning, I have warm gloves for the afternoon class. And then I just layer up and I check in with my bodies with like the kids do. And I say, is there something I need more of? Do I need another sweater? Do I need a second pair of gloves? Do I need a raincoat on top of my winter coat? So it's just trial and error and testing what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
Just like the kids, I found better mud suits and other mud suits for our area and our program. So we just share those. But through being outdoors, our bodies learn to tolerate and acclimate to the weather better. So it's hard to say just do it, but start with a few minutes and make it a little bit longer. And that's one thing I do with the kids. I was like, let's set a timer. Do we think we could do 3 minutes more or 5 minutes more?
Great idea.
And then we set that timer. Then we check in again with ourselves. How do we feel? Are we more active? Did we find something to engage to? Did we add more clothes, take a layer off? And then just keep checking in.
That's great. I love that. I recently did a cold plunge for the first time, and that is exactly how I got through that. Was like, can I do 5 more seconds? Can I do 10 more seconds? And so I love that, being able to give the kids a little bit of ownership over the amount of time that they have, but trying to also stretch them just a little bit longer, so that they can. How much time do you spend outside on average every day?
So our program is split into 3-hour segments. And so the shortest time we were out last year was 45 minutes, but we tried to hit at least an hour and a half in the extreme weather, in the colder weather. But there are times that we spend all 3 hours out there, because what we do out inside, we bring that all outside. So the shortest time is 45 minutes, and our whole class period, the 3-hour lot spot.
So I imagine that people are going to wonder, if you are spending that much time outside, our goal really is to meet the developmental needs of the children. And we know that play is the primary vehicle by which we do that. but we also have an academic element of preschool that really we want that to unfold as organically as it can. How do you incorporate some of those, learning standards and things that you want children to be able to take away from an academic standpoint from your program as they move into kindergarten while you're outside? How do you reinforce those things? How do you assess those things? Give me some background on that.
So because I've been in the early child field for a long time, I'm very have a very good understanding of what our state standards are and kind of what kids need to have to move on into what's developmentally appropriate for a 3 to 5 year old and what they'll need for kindergarten. And so we observe and feed on where they're already having that information and how we can add more to it. So maybe it's a day we're outside all day and we bring blanket toys and we give them those craft supplies. We give them those letters. They're allowed, we have books that are outside. They're allowed to, we sing, we talk, we dance, we bring the music out. We're counting, we use the elements that are outside to write, to practice our fine motor skills, to build our large motor skills. What sound, we bring our senses in to how can they learn with their senses. So maybe they're using sticks, or maybe they're using sidewalk chalk, or maybe they're painting with paint, and then that literacy shows up through letters and sounds. When they're on the swing, we do a lot of rhyming and a lot of counting. One of our biggest things is our kids don't have to share, but when you're finished, can I have a turn? And sometimes they need to have support with that. And so I ask them, how many more times do you want to be pushed on the swing? Or how many more times across the monkey bars till another friend can go? So then we add counting to it. So root counting, number counting, with our hands, making our body those numbers, those shapes, recognizing just the academic pieces that are already there, graphing the airplanes that fly over, the different sizes of them, what's the difference between helicopters. So bringing in what the kids are interested in, and then just feeding off those academic skills outside, just where they're at, because you can learn it all outside. The math, the reading, the role playing, the problem solving, it shows up sometimes a lot better outside than it does inside.
And so it sounds like the primary mode then is that you are watching for opportunities to kind of insert, oh, I see an opportunity for counting, I'll encourage that, or, supporting something you already see happening. Do you do a formal circle time or small groups or anything like that when you're outdoors? Or is it all fairly optional and just kind of happens as it happens?
A lot of it is through the kids' choice, but there's always invitations to learn. So one of the big times is a large group activity where we all sit down to have snack together. We have a routine of our snack where we express gratitude and sing a little song. And then we add that engagement part there. And then the other part is just small group invitations. So if there's something that the kids are interested in, we'll go sit and support them with that. Or maybe we will bring something out that they've been talking about, or one of those academic skills that we're trying to, per se, assess or look for to see their understanding. We'll bring it out there. And as we start to play with it, kids will come and go. Kids always have a choice in our program. They're never forced to sit down and say, oh, it's journal time, grab your journals. Your journals are here if you'd like them. Teacher Christi's over here playing this game if you'd like to join her. Teacher's over here reading books, So there is always choice, and there's always invitations for it. And because of that, the kids will choose in a lot of the times to be able to give us an understanding of where they're at, to document and to picture that and stuff.
And then this is a question that I get fairly frequently. People want to know, how do I communicate that progress over the course of the year to parents? Do you do any sort of a formal progress report or anything so that parents can, I know a lot of what I do something small at the beginning and the end of the year, but I like to just document through pictures and be able to send those to a parent and say, look what happened outside today, or look what happened, during this part of the day. And this is a skill that I'm seeing, and your child is doing phenomenally with it, or I've seen a lot of progress. How do you like to share that progress with parents?
Well, a lot of it is picture documentation, and we have an app that we use that we can tie it to our state standards, show them the pictures, show them what they said and did. So we do a lot of documentation, but sometimes we're just so excited that they've accomplished this goal or we've noticed things. So at pickup or drop off, we like to have those conversations with the families and say, hey, guess what he did today? We're so excited. He's now riding the bike without the training wheels, or he was able to climb, or his sentence structure is getting longer. So a lot of it is just informal conversations. And most of the formal stuff is just documented through pictures and dictation of what the kids have said and done, and then linked to those preschool standards through our app. So
I love that informal aspect of, during pickup and drop off. I feel like it means a lot more when it just happened, and a parent can then talk to their child about it and say, oh, tell me about, what you accomplished or what you did, versus, at the beginning of the year, they knew this, or they didn't know this. And at the end of the year, they do know this. There's so much time in between that it's good information, but it doesn't have the same impact as that kind of immediate recognition of,
mm-hmm.
an accomplishment that a child has. So, all right, I kind of want to move back to the logistics of playing outside and talk about risky play a little bit. I know that for some people, that's maybe a new term and can be a little bit scary to think about introducing a little bit more risky play. We kind of live in a time when be careful is just rolls off the tongue with everything that we do when we see our children, engaging in something that makes us a little bit nervous. But will you share with us a little bit about how you allow children to engage in risky play and make those assessments for themselves while still maintaining safety in your space?
So our space is set up with safety in mind, but with choice to explore. So teachers are aware of the difference between a safety, a hazard, and a risk. So we make sure our place is set up that way. And then we work with the kids one-on-one through their experiences. So one of our rules, or one of our mottos, is to build bodies so their brains can work. We want them to move their bodies, but we want to do it in a safe way. So our second rule is to be brave and allow kids to try things. So we have monkey bars in our program. And when it gets mitten weather or it's cold, the rules of those monkey bars shift, that they're not allowed on them because their bodies can't stay safe. And so just when kids are proposed with a problem or wanting to explore something, teachers are near and observing and ask if they need support. And what does that support look like? Some of the questions that we try to use instead of be careful is, how do you feel? What is your mind telling you? How does your body feel? Do you feel stable? What is your plan? How can teachers support you? We will always support children however they need, but if it ever is a safety situation, we'll step in. So like a risk that we have in our program is we have a climbing tree. There are rules about the climbing tree that they can only climb if a teacher is near them. We will never put them up in a tree, but we will always have them down, because if they can't get up there themselves, their bodies aren't strong enough to hold themselves in the tree. So we practice smaller little climbing things. We have little stumps they can climb on and different things to progress them more. But the biggest part is letting the kids be brave, checking in with them of what their plan is. What does that look like? How can teachers support you? What does the teacher support look like? And then validating their feelings. If they aren't able to do something, that's okay. Let's keep practicing and our bodies will learn how to do that easier. So giving them those opportunities to move their large body motor, and then building a relationship with the kids. I know which kids have better body control than other kids. So there are some kids that can do different things than others, and some kids that I don't need to be as close as I do to others, because we've built that trusting relationship and I know their bodies as they're learning their bodies. and how best to support them.
Do you ever find, like, how long does it take, maybe when you start a new school year? How long does it take for those boundaries to really kind of settle into the kids? I can think of a couple of students that I have right now that we're like, nearing the very end of the school year that I'm still having to remind constantly, when you have a stick, these are the boundaries. Do you have, and I recognize that that is just, kind of a part of his developmental timeline and where he's at. How do you handle, kids that maybe like to push the boundaries a little bit further than you're comfortable with, or who just seem to not get it as far as safety, particularly, I mean, I let kids do most things, in their own space that they feel comfortable with, but when they start getting, maybe with a big stick and they're in the realm, the space of other children, um, do you ever run into that, and how do you handle it?
So yes, accidents will happen with on this, and we have trust that both children are learning about spatial awareness, and that's huge. And so we do have some oversized sticks that we use all year long, so kids can learn the smaller sticks and the larger sticks. Watch both ends of those. And then again, it's the relationship we have with the kids. We build that trusting relationship, and we know which kids that we're going to have to stay closer to throughout the whole year,
Yeah.
and those that pick up the skills. But it's a lot of reminders. Be aware of your space. That's a big body movement. Do you need more room? Look, the swings are a big thing. Swings take up a lot of space. And in the winter, when you're in a hat, it's hard to see. So those reminders, remember, we have our hoods up. It's hard to see the space. Remember, we need to walk more. And then showing them the safe zone that they can always walk, and kind of having that environmentally marked without being marked. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Moving things to open space. This is a big area. This is where we can use our body bigger. And then just working with each kid and the reminders, and then the problem solving that comes with it. That was an accident that the end of your stick bonked a kid. You forgot to look at both ends, and that kid didn't see what you were doing. So having the conversation with the kids and letting them express their feelings and their hurt, and understanding both sides of the situation. So teachers just support them to problem solve through it. Yeah. And then if there ever is a scratch and a bump, the first aid is taken and tender care is given to them to know what it is. But then that problem solving that is always inevitable comes up, and we get to talk through the process.
Yeah. Now that brings up a really good point about injuries. And I don't know if I've ever spoken with an early childhood educator who allows their students to engage in risky play that's ever had a major injury with that. It's usually just the scrapes and the bumps. And have you ever experienced anything significant injury-wise?
In my 22 years, I have had a child be able to do the monkey bars several times, and on her 18th time that day, she slipped and landed just right, and it did end up buckle fracturing her arm. And so I have safety precautions in place for that. All of our staff is trained in first aid and CPR, and parents are told at the first of the year, these are the risky things that could happen with the circumstances of what we have. They sign a contract letting them know that they're aware of these behaviors and what will happen. And that's an immediate phone call to the parent that they're known. But like I say, in 22 years, it's happened just a few times that it's been a deeper wound or the broken arm. So
right. Yeah. And I suppose that's part of life, right? There's always going to be some risk involved. And so the benefits, taking the time to weigh the benefits versus the risks on that. And I've found that most parents are very on board with allowing a little bit of risk. If they almost feel like it's refreshing that they have that, that their child will have that opportunity.
With that being said, when children are allowed to have risk, it is actually safer than coddling them.
Right.
Because they get that body control. They learn their limits. Accidents always happen, but allowing that risk actually is better than stifling it, because they know how to problem solve. They know how to approach it. And then, like we talked about the tree, is then they're strong enough to get up there and they're still supported by an adult. But had they not had the small opportunities of little risks, like jumping off the railroad tie or walking on the uneven ground, they're allowed to be barefoot. So they can, because that helps build their body strength way better than if they had shoes on. But in our program, that is something that we talk about with our parents. Your child will be allowed to have their shoes off in our program. This is the reason why. It builds their bodies.
Yeah. I love, you can always kind of tell at the beginning of the year which kids are maybe coddled a little bit more. And I love, they're kind of some of my favorites because you see that fear that they come with initially on like even jumping off of a small stump is kind of like intimidating to them. And very quickly as they see their peers doing more and more, they want to participate in that. And they feel so accomplished when they're able to do, something that was scary to them when they started the year. Well, I think that's a pretty good note to end on. But would you share with us, do you have any favorite resources that can help somebody who's maybe new to spending more time outside or engaging in risky play that can kind of help them get started on that path? And also tell us where we can find you.
All right. So some of the resources is to trust yourself and to give yourself that opportunity to go outside, build relationships with both your parents and your students in your program. That is the key to risky play, is having those relationships with the parents and the students. If this is something new to you, a good resource that I love that is talked about a lot is Balance and Barefoot, is a beautiful book that gives you kind of the research as to why this is so beneficial to have kids outside and allow them to problem solve. Another resource that I look into is a lot of Anji play. It shows how supported risky play builds kids as well. You can find me on social media at Dirt Learning. I'm on Facebook mostly, and then Instagram. And then my website is dirtlearning.com. You're welcome to contact me through there, look at my resources there, and just reach out for support if you need it, because I am an advocate for the benefits of outside and child-led learning.
Well, I love it. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. And I'm going to message you and get some of your favorite brands for some of those outdoor, the mud suits and the gloves that you like for kids. And I'll put those in the show notes so that people who are trying to find some resources for parents will have a place to go for that. I learned a ton. I'm excited to maybe make some tweaks in my own program with the outdoor play and the things that we do to just make that better and capitalize even more on the benefits that come from that. So thank you for being here with us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks again for listening. Remember to hit that subscribe button to continue learning how to bring more play into your classroom. Plus, get more tips on Instagram at play_before_pencils or at playbeforepencils.com.